Hello there, everyone. Dr. Tharp here. And as I always say, I am on a mission to reverse type 2 diabetes naturally, to help people, especially women who look just like me, to reverse type 2 diabetes naturally. And for those of you with pre-diabetes, you can come along as well because the day you get diagnosed with prediabetes, you really should be acting like someone who already has diabetes in order to successfully overcome it, in order to successfully avert being on medications, in order to successfully avert being called officially a type 2 diabetic. Tonight, I wanted to talk about one specific topic, and that is intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting, there's a big craze about it. And the reason I think it's really important to talk about that in relation to reversing type 2 diabetes is because so many women are using it as a strategy, but are often getting into more trouble with intermittent fasting. And it's a question that I get constantly. And it's actually the women I work with, it's one of the things, one of the main things that they have been doing for years without success. So that is why I wanted to talk about, is fasting a good approach to controlling your blood sugars? And if it is, then how should you be doing it? And so the easiest answer that I have is that fasting can play a role in reversing type 2 diabetes. There's no doubt about it. It does play a role, but it has to be done in combination with all the other strategies, and it has to be done correctly. So, um, intermittent fasting refers to eating within a certain amount of window. So there's 24 hours in a day. You want to reserve a certain window called the eating window, that you are dedicated to eating, a few meals throughout the day, getting your nutrition in, and then you're fasting for the rest. Some people advise a 8 hour eating window. Some people might go even less hours than eight. So many, the window can vary. And many people, because of that, have a later in the day eating window. So many people tend to eat start breakfast at, let's say, 10, 11. Some people even at noon, and then your eating window is open till 5 or 6 p.m. And so that provides you only a short amount of time to get your nutrition in. So why do women with type 2 diabetes get into trouble with intermittent fasting? Well, number one, the number one thing and the number one problem I've seen especially among the women that I work with, is that they are extremely busy. They are career driven women who are, up at the crack of dawn. They're heading to work, they're getting the kids out the door. They are, taking care of everything else and everyone else, right? And so, what I found is that many of the women who are struggling with type 2 diabetes are using intermittent fasting as a strategy because it fits into that busy life, right? You don't really have to worry about nutrition when you're only worrying about eating for 5 hours of the day. So you're really only worried about getting maybe that lunchtime or that dinner time meal in. And that is often where the issue is. So many women, again, are just struggling with a busy lifestyle. They don't have enough time. You're on that treadmill, you're on that hamster wheel, you're constantly going. And so your way of trying to knock two birds out with one stone, take care of all the obligations that you have, but also to take care of your health, is intermittent fasting. You do get into trouble though when skip meals in the morning. You end up eating only maybe one meal a day. That one meal a day turns out to be very nutrient empty. So nutrient it's not nutrient dense, it's not meeting your needs for the day. And what ends up happening there is that you end up with a low energy because you're not actually giving your body what it needs. So you end up in more trouble there. So for those of you who are intermittent fasting, I know that you can relate to this, and that is that you are struggling with low energy. And you're saying, well, low energy is probably a part of the process. It's probably one of those, it comes with the territory. And the truth is, you can you can achieve type 2 diabetes reversal and feel healthy and feel energetic at the same time. But it's all about having the right strategy. So, intermittent fasting, where you're skipping breakfast, you're only getting one meal in for the day, is definitely not the right strategy. And for those of you who have been doing it or just started doing it, you might see changes in the scale. You're going to lose weight, and you're going to lose weight rapidly when you're starting out, right? When you're doing it somewhat committed. But the problem there is it's really unsustainable. It's difficult to keep up for the long term. And so what you find is those pounds that you lose, you put right back on. So the other disadvantage with intermittent fasting, well, the first one I just described is you're low energy. You're not meeting your nutrition goals. You're not giving your body, you're not fueling your body with the nutrition it needs by giving it only one meal in the eating window that you've allotted yourself. So, low energy is the first thing because you're not eating enough. The second issue is that, remember, it's not sustainable, right? You are now low energy. You are feeling miserable. You feel like you're on a crash diet, right? So, what happens late at night, or not even late at night? What happens at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock? You are winding down for the day, and those cravings hit. Now you're having cravings. Now you're dying to eat, the chips or the bread. You are having some serious, overwhelming cravings. And the reason you're having those overwhelming cravings is because the body is telling you, I am not getting what I need. Therefore, I'm going to tell your brain it needs to eat. So now your stomach and your brain are going back and forth, right? Your stomach is releasing hormones to the brain, telling your brain, look, you need to eat, you need to feed me. That is where the cravings come from. So, for those of you who are struggling with overwhelming cravings, it's really because you're not giving your body what it needs. So, in intermittent fasting, you're really depriving your body to an extent, and therefore the body starts to scream for food. So now you're low energy, you're having overwhelming cravings, and very likely, if you have tried and failed at intermittent fasting, you gain the weight and more back. So that is the second reason intermittent fasting is definitely not right for you. Now, the third reason if your approach to intermittent fasting is the wrong strategy, the third problem that you're going to run into is that, especially, remember, we're talking about people with type 2 diabetes. So you have type 2 diabetes, you're low energy, your blood sugars are still running high, you're not feeding your body what it needs, so your cravings are going through the roof, and therefore you tend to go for those sugar laden and carb heavy sweets or treats in order to meet your needs. So that's the second. Now the third issue boils down to, um, when you go on intermittent fasting, it's like a crash diet. Again, strategy is everything. So if you are intermittent fasting in the wrong way, let's say you've lost some weight. Let's say you've lost 5 pounds in the span of a week or two. So now you've dropped about 5 pounds, which is a lot of weight within that period of time, and you're feeling good about yourself. But one thing I want to point out is when you lose weight that rapidly and you're not giving your body what it needs, guess what you start to lose? You start to lose that precious muscle that's on your body. And if you followed me for a while now, if you have gone into, if you've watched any of my videos or watched any of the lives with me, then you would know that muscle is a critical part of blood sugar control. So now you are losing weight rapidly. So instead of just losing body fat, you're now eating into your muscles, you're losing muscles. So you've lost 5 pounds of some fat and muscle, precious muscle. Now, the what happens there is, remember, this isn't sustainable, right? Your body is screaming for food. It's the cravings are unbearable, so now you can't keep it up anymore, and so now you've gained that weight back. Maybe you've gained, instead of gained just 5 pounds, you've gained 7 pounds back. But guess what happens there? You have not regained your muscle. You have now replaced that muscle that you lost with fat. And so now you end up in an even worse scenario, because you lost all that weight rapidly. You took away some muscle, but you're never going to really regain that muscle because you're not doing the things you need to gain muscle on your body. So what happens is you put fat right back in the place of that muscle. And that is where you start to see the fatty areas showing up on your midsection, on your back. You find it on your arms, right? So that is where now you become frustrated, right? That's where the frustration comes in, because you went through all those lengths. You did lose 5 pounds, but now you put it back on. And now you're frustrated because you're back to square one or even worse, and your blood sugars are still through the roof. So the problem here is that there is a wrong way and a right way to do intermittent fasting, and most people are doing the wrong way. Now, the right way to do intermittent fasting is to reserve your fasting for the night. Nighttime is the key when it comes to intermittent fasting. You want to spend the day getting the right nutrition in. So don't skip breakfast. Instead, you want to make sure you're getting an early breakfast that's high in protein and high in your complex carbs and your good fats. Okay, so you want to be getting your protein in, and protein is everything, right? That's what's going to preserve your muscles. That's what's going to help give you the energy. That is what's going to help control your blood sugars. So you want to work on getting in your protein. And you should be getting in at least 100 grams of protein a day, which again, by many people's standards, is very hard to do. So that means you have to give yourself a generous eating window. So you get up in the morning, you should be eating, between 7 and 10 in the morning, in order to start getting adequate nutrition in. Then you want to be eating your lunch. Again, protein heavy meal. You want to make sure it's very well balanced so that it's focusing on blood sugar control and preserving your muscles. So, again, that is protein, fiber, good fats, and complex carbohydrates. So, those are the key. Just to summarize very quickly, that's what your meal should have in it. And then, of course, you want to get dinner, and dinner you want to get in by 4 or 5. The latest is 6 p.m. And then after that, you can start your fasting window. And now you're going from, so let's say, 6 to 9, which now puts you in a 15-hour fasting period, right? So instead of doing that all day, you're so busy, you're intermittent fasting, then you're busy at work. So there's no way you really have that time to fit the nutrition in. But if you're giving yourself time to eat breakfast, eat a lunch, and eat a dinner, you open up, you become generous with that eating window during the day. You'll find that you'll get enough food in your body to sustain your body, get enough protein to sustain your muscle mass, which is really critical, especially as we age. As we age, we lose muscle. So we don't want to accelerate that process by now eating, by now losing our muscle, right? You want to be able um, to preserve our muscle. And as we age, it becomes even more critical to preserve our muscle mass so our metabolisms are working well and that our blood sugar machine is working well. So you want to be eating to feed your muscles and to maintain your muscles. So if you think of, say, osteoporosis, how as we age, we lose our bones. And so that makes us prone to fractures, that makes us prone to bad posture. It's the same thing when it comes to muscle. As we age, we progressively lose muscle. And that is why it gets harder as we age. It starts to get harder to do the most basic things, right? When you were younger, you could bend down with no problem. You could get up from a chair with no problem. But as we age, we're starting to realize, wow, it's harder to go up a flight of stairs. It's a little harder to get up from a stooped position. And that is because as we age, we are losing muscle. So the last thing you want to do is to accelerate that process of muscle loss by intermittent fasting the wrong way. So intermittent fasting the right way helps you to maintain your muscle mass. Of course, maintaining your muscle mass also entails strength training, but nutrition is the key as well. And the trouble that you get into when you're doing intermittent fasting all by yourself on your own, because you heard it somewhere on social media, is that you do it the wrong way and you end up with more problems down the line. So, we don't want to lose muscle and accelerate the problem by intermittent fasting the wrong way and losing too much weight and ultimately weight that we regain. Um, and for those of you who say, okay, well, I really don't need to lose weight. My problem is that I'm diabetic and I need to gain weight. Well, the same thing happens with intermittent fasting, right? That is why you're probably losing weight and then not wanting to lose weight. Is if you are intermittent fasting and you've gotten into that habit of intermittent fasting, so you're eating later in the day, now you're eating less than your body needs. You start to lose weight rapidly, and you don't have a whole lot of fatty tissue on your body. So you're starting to eat into muscle, and that's where you see your blood sugars become uncontrolled, right? Because now you've lost so much muscle. So even for those of you who really don't have weight to lose, and you're wondering, well, why is this happening to me if I don't have excess body fat? It's the same thing. Your muscle mass is critical, so you do need to gain weight, but you need to gain the right weight. And so it's all about putting the right foods into your body to put that weight on, the good weight. And muscle, it must be muscle weight. We don't want any fat tissue on the body. The less fat tissue, the better. So, with that, that is just a quick, to answer any questions about intermittent fasting. That is how I usually address intermittent fasting. Is that fasting itself is not a bad thing, but it has to be done in the right way, or you can actually get yourself into more trouble. So, if you intermittent fast throughout the night, then you will find that things work a lot better because our bodies are supposed to be sleeping at night anyways. So one thing, if you look at your patterns of cravings, for example, when you're up late at night, you tend to get those cravings because the brain is tired. You're up way past your bedtime, and so those hunger hormones trigger cravings. So the reality is you should be winding down during the night. You should be sleeping during that fasting window, and then you should wake up refreshed and ready to have a good early breakfast before you jump into your day. All right, with that, I'm going to close off, but I want to encourage anyone who has questions. Intermittent fasting is a question I get frequently, so that's why I'm here tonight. But if there's any other topic related to type 2 diabetes that you want to cover, any other questions that you want me to cover, then it's definitely comment under this live and I can address any questions. I can bring it up as a topic in future lives as well. If you want that additional help, if you want the right strategy, if you want to, work with me one-on-one, then I have an awesome opportunity called the Reverse Her and the Reverse Now program. It is where I, help women successfully reverse type 2 diabetes naturally. and with the right strategy. So you can go ahead, click the link in my bio, and you can book your free discover call there, so that we can at least get to know each other a little bit more, get to know what your unique struggles are, and go from there. That opportunity is for serious inquiries only. If you are still just thinking about reversing type 2 diabetes naturally, or you're not ready to be fully committed to change, then I say reserve those calls for those who are truly ready. And so with that, just find the link in the bio. There's also an opportunity for there's other different things there that you can review to get to know the services that we provide as well. All right, with that, I will see you tomorrow night. Have a good night, everyone.